Since day one of Russia's war on Ukraine, Lithuania has been one of the most vocal backers of Kiev. The small country in the Baltics has been pushing for more military aid for Ukraine and a clear path towards NATO and the EU. More than 3.5 years into the war, Lithuania itself is facing hybrid attacks and airspace violations. How serious is the situation? Here at the Lithuanian embassy in Berlin, we had a chance to catch up with Foreign Minister Kęstutis Budrys. Minister Budrys, good to see you here in Berlin.
Thank you for having me here.
The very start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, your country has been a staunch supporter of Kiev. At the same time, Lithuania has been and is a NATO frontline state due to its strategic location bordering Russia's exclave Kaliningrad and Belarus. And that means that you are on the front line of a potential conflict with Russia. Are you ready for such a scenario?
We should raise the question whether we are all ready for these type of scenarios. Yes, we are on the front line. Yes, we are more in the proximity of the different threats. But when we talk about preparedness, when we talk about deterrence, when we talk about capabilities, that's the question for us all. That's not only for the frontline nations. We are doing our part. We are doing our share. And that is increasing the defense spending. Next year we will have 5.4% of GDP defense spending. That will be the highest number in NATO and in all the free world. And we are doing it with the purpose to increase the readiness of our armed forces and to have the fully operational and maneuverable land division. And then also we're doing with the purpose to expand our host nation support. We want to build infrastructure and increase the level of it to be prepared to receive the German brigade at the end of 27, and also to increase the quality of the conditions that are provided to our American allies that are also deployed in Lithuania. So that's on our part. But it's only part of the efforts, of collective efforts. The other part is what all the alliance is doing. And in this, we have two important steps already that we fulfilled, and now we are moving to the implementation part. The first one was regional defense plans. When we, as the allies, agreed, so what will be the overall idea and the plans how we will fight if it is needed, and how we will defeat our enemies if it will be needed. So first step. The second step was we set up the NATO capability targets, meaning what is needed for Germany, what is needed for Spain, what is needed for Belgium, and for Lithuania and other Nordic countries. So we agreed on it. That was politically signed. Now is the part of implementation. And on implementation part, I see less enthusiasm and less mobilization comparing to the one that was in the previous stages.
At the same time, it seems that Russia is testing NATO when we look at recent air incursions, especially in eastern part of the alliance. Do you think that, or do you have the impression that the Kremlin is getting bolder and bolder because maybe they see how difficult it is for Europe and for NATO to speed up their efforts to take ownership of their own defense?
What concerns our capabilities, what we are building, we are doing it in purpose to make our deterrence more effective, functioning. If our deterrence functions, it means that there will be peace for our countries and conditions for our economies to prosper and so on. So we do it with a purpose. What Russia is doing is shaking our deterrence in the peacetime, intends to create some gray zone. That's why we saw interference and disruption of our critical undersea infrastructure in the Baltic Sea. That's why we saw the incidents with the drones. And now we see the incidents with the meteorological balloons, and all of them serve the same purpose. And this purpose is to question our readiness, to question our deterrence. It shows obviously that it's not working if Russia is messing around with it, and to send the message to our societies that maybe there are some more problems within our countries. That maybe this is the reason for us not to interfere into something that is happening in Ukraine. Maybe you better take care of something that is in your backyard instead of putting extra billion to the defense of Ukraine. That's the strategic message that Russia tries to project on us, and we have to deny it. So first of all, we have to restore the deterrence, as we did in the Baltic Sea. So when we had those disruptions of critical infrastructure, NATO reacted with a Baltic Sentry mission, increased posture in Baltic Sea, increased the number of vessels, also reviewed the procedures of the littoral nations around the Baltic Sea, what we are doing in the case there is a vessel without a flag, or false flag, and so forth. We increased a bit the price for Russians to operate the shadow fleet, and guess what? 1 year there are no disruptions of our critical undersea infrastructure. It worked. Same with the airspace. When we had the intrusions by the drones, in July, there were 2 in Lithuania, one carrying explosives, and it landed in the middle of our country because the fuel was out, not because we shut it down. That was the very ring of the bell, for NATO to react. Then we had another incident with Poland, more than 20 drones. We had fighter jets violating Estonian airspace. We had fighter jets violating recently our airspace. What we need to do, we had to increase the posture of NATO fighter jets, also ground-based the detectors and other measures. And this is how to deter Russians. And we see that for what concerns drones, those numbers dropped. We do not have the incidents repeating. And the question is not whether it was intentional, not intentional from Russia's side. The question is whether Russia takes precaution and avoids, any tensity with NATO on its borders. So they didn't care. Now they more do care. And this is a good news. So the same practice, the same lessons we have to apply elsewhere. And same we have to do with meteorological balloons right now in Lithuania. This is the danger.
Those are those cigarette smuggling balloons that...
Belarus is instrumentalizing again international criminal activities. That was illegal migration that they instrumentalized and then weaponized against us through our borders. We tackled that problem, and we are bringing, by the way, Belarus accountable to International Court of Justice for it, because that was the state-organized activities against us. Now they are instrumentalizing international organized activities, smuggling operations. And with the smuggling of cigarettes, and especially of cigarettes in Belarus, we have to understand that there are 2 huge factories that dedicate the big part of their capacity for smuggling, not for exports, for smuggling. And it pumps up the finances to the regime. So those operations were conducted in many ways. Now they use meteorological balloons. When they saw that they're interrupting and disrupting our civil aviation, we had to shut down our airport again and again, and it cost our airlines millions and millions in losses. Now they see that they can put the tension on us and force us to do some favors into the regime's direction, in the form of sanctions and the other. We have to deny this thinking of the regime. So that's why Lithuania, first of all, increased the activities on our border with what concerns protection, with detection, with the...
So the border is now closed.
Yeah, for migration it was closed with the fence that we built in 1 year. Now we are putting the radars and other system on the border, and we closed the border, land border with Belarus. And that was the one thing that we do on our side. What we have to do on the European level and with the solidarity that was expressed by so many nations, and I'm really grateful for it, we have to impose sanctions on Belarus for hybrid activities. Because within the Belarusian sanction regime, there is one criteria lacking, and this is the hybrid attacks against the EU. So this is what is happening. They're attacking us. We have to respond with the more robust...
So you will try to convince your fellow foreign ministers on the EU level to impose new sanctions against Belarus in which area?
Yeah, so that's what we have to do. First, put the criteria, because now it's the human rights, then now it's the assistance to Russia for aggression against Ukraine, but now we have to add hybrid. So that will be step A. And then step B, we have to review the sectors and sanctions where we want to, to impose sanctions. And that is, first of all, fertilizers still, ammonium fertilizers, for example. That is the same civil aviation. Civil aviation as the sector is not sanctioned by EU, and they're interfering with the EU civil aviation. So that's the area. There are other fields like business-to-business services, like accounting, legal services, auditing, and the others. So we provided a huge list of what we have to do in purpose to avoid these activities in the future. Because we will manage the balloons problem. Then there will be something else. They will take something else that is, happening across the border and will instrumentalize it and weaponize it.
And is the border maybe part of a bigger deal? Because we see that Alexander Lukashenko, the leader of Belarus, seems to be eager to make a deal with the West. He has been talking to Mr. Trump, the US president. He has released a number of political prisoners. So is he trying to make a deal?
We see the attempts from United States side diplomatically to achieve the release of all the political prisoners, as they are called in America, political hostages. And I think we should also apply this term because it describes the situation more precisely, what they are. They're hostages, they're taken by the regime. And there are more than 1,000 of them, 12 or 1,300. And that is the largest number in all the continent, what concerns political prisoners. They want to achieve this, as they had the good results already with some political prisoners, so they want to achieve the big result. And we support this efforts, and we support these efforts because I'm convinced that if someone can do this, that's the President Trump and his special envoy. On the other hand, we see that regime is using this period of time in trying to soften the environment around it, and also to put the pressure on the neighbors. So it cannot happen at the same time. We cannot go into the talks, meaning we, our United States allies, go into the talks, and at the same time regime shows the strength against the neighbors and forces to achieve some of the goals of it. So what we are seeing is that the regime is manipulating this current situation, and that is our message also to our transatlantic allies, that this is the problem. We are talking about the NATO frontline here, we're talking EU frontline here when we're talking with the European partners, and this is our shared responsibility to bring back the order, and we know how to do it. It worked well previously, so it will this time. And
you've just been to the US, you spoke with the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. You met with the new US envoy to Belarus, John Cole. So do they understand you situation? Are you on the same page?
What concerns assessment of what is happening, I'm really glad, but this is how it has to be actually among allies, that we share it. We share it within Europe, we share it transatlantically, that this is the instrumentalization of the activities in purpose to cause the harm to our side and enforce some of the parameters and settings on the neighboring country. We share on this. So then the question is, so what we do about it? So can we ignore it? Of course no, but we have to act. So I'm sure that Americans are acting at their level with their channels. At the European level, it's not only solidarity, but also the increased sanctions. Once again, we still have the headroom here. And we haven't during all the packages of sanctions, 19th already for Russia and Belarus, we haven't synchronized them. So we should seek synchronization of the sanctions, because otherwise the regime is not changing the behavior. And we shouldn't take their words for serious. That is a lot of propaganda and play with our minds and a lot of manipulation with information.
And we can assume that Belarus does nothing without Vladimir Putin's knowledge or his consent, right? So would you say that this apparent charming offensive of Belarus is part of Russia's efforts to weaken the West's resolve?
I wouldn't speculate about something that I don't specifically know, but from what we know from previous times, looking into this cycle of elections in Belarus, so-called elections that end up with the beaten people in the streets and political prisoners. So when we went down, then yes, there was a charming offensive from Belarus again, and we released the sanctions, and it went down again, and it goes in the waves. And in all these waves of our, warmed relations with Belarus, of course, Russia was part of the game, and it was for Lukashenko sort of the bargaining chip then with Russia to get, better conditions for the imports of gas, or in the discussions on oil and oil refinery and taxation, there were so many things that he was bargaining on the other side, and we are okay with it, but we should stop it. We should break the cycle, and we should deny this possibility to play with us, and especially when the front line is in danger of the activities.
And during your recent visit to the US, did you have the impression, were you reassured that the US will not let Europe down should Vladimir Putin decide to attack NATO territory?
The message is the same as it was before Hague Summit, during Hague Summit, or after it. Europe should step up, and we should take our neighborhood seriously. We should increase our defense spending. We should increase our capabilities. We should be a good ally of United States. That's what they expect. It's not about leaving us behind. It's about the interest of United States to have the strong partner. And I really took this message as it was outspoken, literally. And that's what they are telling us all the time.
But they have already pulled out troops from Eastern Europe, for instance, Romania. There are still US soldiers in Lithuania. Will they stay?
I hope that they will stay. And I have all the arguments from strategic point of view, military point of view, economic and financial, what concerns the very host nation support package that we provide, from the point of view of the training facilities and areas and ranges that they have there. So I think that is a win-win situation for Americans, and I don't know the other place where they would be better stationed and with the greater effect than they are in Lithuania. So I hope that within the review of their global posture, and there will be the review of European posture of United States forces, there will be the place where the forces will remain or even increase, and that's the very front line. That's in our all interest, and that is my message to the other part of the Atlantic Ocean or here in Europe. It's our shared responsibility to strengthen the resilience on the front line, and I do not feel that we are weak there. We are already strong. We learn a lot there because there is new type of threats, like with each month thrown at us, and we adapt. We get more robust, and this is a good threat. It's a trend where we are, but we have to add, additionally. With the flagship projects that were just suggested and from the European Commission, building the anti-drone wall, that is important. The Eastern Watch or operation, that is also important, because if we are not strong there at the front line, we are in trouble as the continent, because it will expand to the west, as it was the case with the drones. Yes, it started with drones at our front line and at the borders, but then we saw drones in Denmark, in Netherlands, and elsewhere. So if you want to keep the operations as much routine and safe and secure in a peacetime as we used previously, so start with the front line. And that is the message. And it will cost money. Of course it will cost money.
And Germany is building up capabilities in Lithuania with a brigade to be fully deployed by the end of 2027. And that's, of course, crucial for Lithuania, the support from NATO allies and Germany in particular. But is everything that is happening with regards to the brigade happening at the pace that is sufficient from your perspective?
We do a lot on our side, and we keep this speed. We understanding that there is 2 years and a couple of months only left till the deadline, and we want everything to be prepared. That is the largest project ever in Lithuania what concerns construction, 1.5 billion euros worth of building of roads and barracks and training areas and shooting ranges and everything. And we
are you happy with the pace?
Of course, we could do it faster, but we will measure, when the deadlines will approach. But we are all into it. What I'm happy about, I see also the huge progress on German side. And this seriousness and readiness. I see the increased defense spending that sends the message that it's not only about brigade, it's about armed forces of Germany, with division going after the brigade, with the corps going after the division. And this is the strong deterrence message. That's what we want. We want to preserve peace. This is the ticket of ours to peace. For Lithuania, it's not only military infrastructure. What I see right now, and then during my visit here, that's the broader security dialogue and our discussion on many things. That's the increased and widened economic cooperation that we have right now. That's the German investments in Lithuania, in our defense industry. That's the cultural exchange. And then we are planning the really intensive Lithuanian year in 27 in Germany. That is people-to-people contact. That's German language that is on high demand in Lithuania to be learned. And this will bring our nations closer and closer. So I'm really optimistic and really excited, looking forward into this new period of our cooperation.
When Russia's war in Ukraine started, it was politicians and officials in Eastern Europe, including Lithuania, saying, we had told you so, we warned you against Russia. And they demanded a change of the mindset in Western Europe, particularly in Germany. What's your take on that? Is there a different mindset right now with regard to dealing with Russia in Germany?
There are changes, obviously. And then from the very beginning of the full-scale invasion, I had no doubts about the political will of Germany to carry the burden of the collective defense and of the future of the security of Europe. I saw it, and I truly believe it till now. What concerns the very approaches and methods towards countries like Russia, I'm not sure whether we changed our calculation, what works, what not. I still see this naivety, what concerns the attempts to change the behavior, that through cooperation we can have the difference and so forth and so on. We are still in the ignorant position, and we are not following their plans and their intents. On the Russian side, the intent was very clearly stated to us at the end of 21. They want the NATO being destroyed and dismantled. They want infrastructure to being sent back to the borders of 97. They want Americans out with all their capabilities, including nuclear capabilities from Europe. And they are working on this specific goal. That's not only about Ukraine. I'm not sure whether we still remember how it all started. And this approach that is false from the very beginning, that we are so big, attractive power that people will, and especially regimes will change their behavior, is also very falsely applied in the case of China. I see the same parallels. Still people think that, okay, if we'll be engaged more with China, it somehow will prevent from China's strategies to absolutely dominate and destroy our industries. This is wrong. And we should learn from our mistakes. And it's not about the different competing scenarios for the future. That's about very exact lessons that we should identify and learn. So from Russia, we had enough of those. I haven't seen any lesson that I would bring for me a conclusion that, oh, we should be more open, oh, we should create something with them. We have to create European security architecture that would prevent us from Russia invading other countries, that would protect our territorial integrity. And on the economic field, I see the same need with China, because we will find ourselves in 5 or 10 years with our economies on our knees. And that's the huge problem also.
Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you.